Afternoon, ma'am.
Please, please mute your microphone so that we can start the class. Let's start now then. So today we are going to read. Uh, Please mute your microphone, please, everyone. Okay. So today we are going to discuss block 2 of British novel, that is MEG3. And in block 2, we have Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So today we are going to read Pride and Prejudice. It is everyone's first love in English literature. Every young girl pursuing English literature dreams of a Darcy. And Elizabeth Bennet is the fantasy of every young man. So it is one of the most read novels. Now let's start. As I told you in the last class, today also we will begin with the context, then we will move to the text. So there are some ways you can approach a literary text. We have to ask ourselves certain questions when we read a literary text. First we read it for the story, then we ask ourselves certain critical questions. For example, who wrote it and why? How do the writer's concerns appear in the text? Then, how about the text that seems to have no author? Or what or how does it mean? What's the meaning of the text? What perennial or cross-cultural themes and symbols does it engage? Or what are the universal concerns that the novel or the work deals with? Because the novels or the works which deals with universal themes like, for example, marriage, love, death, birth, these are considered perennial themes. So what literary techniques does it use? For example, does it use the epistolary form or letter writing, or is it a Gothic novel, or is it a prose romance, or it may be a Bilton's romance? We are going to discuss all these types of genre, but in the next class. Because today I don't want to break the spell of the story of Pride and Prejudice by discussing this. We will keep these different genres within the genre of novel itself to the next class. Then what do the text influenced it? Now we are talking about some ways to approach a literary text. So we think about who wrote it and why, what can be the meaning of the text, what are the universal concerns or the perennial themes that the book deals with, or what literary techniques does the author use, what are the text. Excuse me, there was a disturbance, I think. All of you can hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? All of you can hear me clearly?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay, okay. So what other text influenced it and what other text did it influence? Now, how did the author and the original audience understand the work at that time when it was written? Or how does it reveal or conceal larger social cultural concern of the author's time? For example, when we talk of Jane Austen, we always talk of the missing historical context or the missing historical events in her works. So what effect has it on the audience over the years in different time periods? So what was the reception of the book by the audience of different periods? How does it affect the individual readers like us? And how does it express or represent gender, male or female? And what is its relation to the history of women or the female readers, a writer in particular? So these are certain questions that come to our mind when we read a literary text. That's why we have to read the context as well. So let's begin with Jane Austen. As you see the IGNOU material, the first unit is about the context, the novel in its context. So it provides a general introduction to Pride and Prejudice by looking at the immediate social and cultural environment in which it is written and situated, and by relating the text to the 18th century tradition of realistic fiction. So a study of the social, intellectual or historical context as part of the study of a literary work might be undertaken with two aims. We discussed about it. Still, I would like to repeat. So we read the historical or the intellectual context of a novel with two aims. The first one is to understand the thought patterns and the influences the authors come in contact with. I repeat, the first of these is to try and recover some of the thought patterns or the influences that the authors comes in contact with, whether consciously or not. And the second is the consequence of the first one. And it involves looking at the implications of authorial choices of form, genre, and language in relation to the influences of the time. So it's important to know about the time or the historical context. Then when we see the time of Jane Austen, she was born in the year 1775, that means in 18th century, isn't it? So she was born in 18th century and she lived through the Romantic age because she died in 1827. Sorry, 17. 1817, not 27. And at that time, we call it the Romantic age of English literature. So we have to understand her time. She started in the 18th century and lived up to the Romantic age. So there were important and widespread changes in the social and political consciousness of Europe at this time, with peasants beginning to move from rural areas to towns. So we see the rise of middle class in 18th century. Increased trade, communication and travel, as well as the economic gains and contact with other cultures brought by imperialism. Imperialism was a significant development of the period. Then we see the fast growing middle classes and the revolution in France. The French Revolution, the Napoleonic War, all those things happened during her time. But we hardly find any trace of it. We don't find those events being mentioned in her novels. Also the conditions of England, like class divisions, continued to be fairly rigid in England at that time. Though Jane Austen does in her novels explore the beginning of class mobility, how we shall discuss later. It was also the time of enlightenment. We discussed about enlightenment in the last class. It had a great emphasis on reason, the power of logical thinking. It emphasized reason, logical thinking, and good sense. And how is it reflected in the writing of Jane Austen? Then she also witnessed the beginning of Romanticism and how it influenced her works. So we have to read the author against the historical, cultural, and the literary background. Then we also discussed that the beginning of the 18th century marked the rise of novel as an art form. In connection with all these, we have to read Jane Austen. Let's come to the author's biography now. So I would like to repeat her time. 1775 she was born and she died in 1817. So the image of Jane Austen's world as confined and countrified, because she wrote about the countryside, the rural area, is so famous that we...
Ma'am?
Yes, excuse me.
Hello?
Yes.
Now we will read block 1 or block 2, ma'am?
We are reading block 1. It's not about reading block 1 and block 2, because we have to read the story, the text also. And most of the materials given to you are critical analysis. And when you see the first block, it is mostly about the context of the novel, which we discussed just now. Unit 1 is, today we are discussing block 2, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. We are discussing Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, that is block 2 of MEG 3. In unit 1 of the IGNOU material, you have novel in its context. There you get a glimpse of the context of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. We'll come to that in the latter part of the lecture. So first we discussed the time of Jane Austen, how she lived through the last part of 18th century and the beginning of 19th century, which is termed as the Romantic Age. So in her time, when we speak of the social cultural context, we find things like the growth of middle class, the revolution in France, the French Revolution, also the publication of lyrical ballad, the growth of poetry, the romanticism, enlightenment, and also the rise of novel. Against all these historical context, she wrote. Then coming to the biography of the author, yesterday we discussed about the 18th century, so I need not repeat those things. I think we had elaborately discussed it. So today we are going to start, just I had a brief introduction about the time period. And now let's come to Jane Austen, the author's biography. So she was born in 1775, and the image of Jane Austen's world is confined and countrified. It's so famous that we tend to forget that she lived at a time of great transition, like the French Revolution or the Romantic Revolution, or for example the Napoleonic War. It is hardly reflected in her novels. Likewise, the common view of her novels as romantic tales filled with marriageable girls and manipulative mothers has been so encouraged by film and television adaptation that it is easy to forget that she was one of the finest social observers of her time. And one of the greatest comic ironists of all times. She lived in the country, true. She never married. She never left the British shores. Hers was a confined world. But as Mrs. Bennet says in Pride and Prejudice, I assure you that there is as much that is going on in the country as in the town. She wrote about the rural life. Then Jane Austen was born in Steventon near Bath. And she was the sixth of the 7 children of George Austen. The tragic event of her life consists of nothing more than interesting than a few changes of address, the death of her father in 1805, and the short holidays by the sea and the visits to friends and relations. So her life was not much eventful. She led a very protected life in the countryside, and occasionally she visited the town. The material for her novels was drawn entirely from the experience of human nature and social manners acquired in such an environment. A prosperous middle-class circle in provincial surrounding is always her setting. Then after her father's death, Austen continued to live with her mother and sister, and the strength of the family ties, particularly she had a very good tie with her sister Cassandra. You must have heard of it. I hope many of you must have read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Have you? Have you read Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
very
ma'am.
good. Very good. So it is a must read. Okay. And not be bored if you read the novel even for 5, 10 or 15 times. It is as refreshing as ever. So then we were talking about Jane Austen, her life, then her career. Austen began her literary career at the age of 15 with Love and Friendship. Then her eye for the ridiculous in contemporary text also inspired Narthinger Abbey. Narthinger Abbey, remember, was the first written. It was one of her, it was possibly her earliest work of fiction, but it was published posthumously after her death in 1818. And her first published novel was Sense and Sensibility. Sense and Sensibility was published in 1811. 1811. It was followed by Pride and Prejudice, which was published in 1813. Pride and Prejudice was published in 1813. Then Mansfield Park, she published in 1814, and Emma was published in 1816. Persuasion was her last novel, and it was also published posthumously in 1818. So she has authored 6 novels. Let me utter the names of the novels again. First, Sense and Sensibility, 1811, published in 1811. Second, Pride and Prejudice, published in 1813. Third, Mansfield Park, published in 1814. Emma in 1816. Then Northanger Abbey in 1818. And Persuasion, the last novel, in 1818. So the last 2 novels, Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, were published after her death. So in all these works, she chose deliberately to portray small groups of people in a limited and perhaps confining environment, and to mold the apparently trivial, the small petty incidents of their lives into a poised novel of manners. Hers has been called the novels of manners. Her characters were provincial and restricted to the English gentry, with their lives revolving around courtship and marriage. The major theme in her novels, we all know, was what? Courtship and marriage. Then Austen's novel appeared anonymously and did not prove to be very popular in her own days. She did not write her name as the author when she published. Emma, however, was reviewed favorably by Walter Scott. And Lady Susan, an epistolary novel, and the Watsons were not published until they appeared in the 2nd edition of J.E. Austen Leigh's Memoir of Jane Austen in 1871. In 1871, Lady Susan and the Watsons were published. And the fragment of Sanditon, on which she was working in the last months of her life, was first published in only 1925, so late. So these are the works of Jane Austen. You must have heard about the ivory tower, or the 2 inches of ivory in which she wrote. It was a limited sphere. From her ivory tower of English countryside, Austen explored some of the most pertinent and topical issues of the day, like women's right to inherit property. That is a major concern. Women's right to inherit property. The dysfunctional marriages and family life. The decline of gentry and the role of the clergy. And never she was a strident feminist. She was not like others, means not like Kate Millett. She was not a feminist, apparently. And her exposure of the countless wrongs that a woman had to suffer revealed the writer's knowledge of the gender bias prevalent in English society. We'll talk about this later. How she was influenced by the time and what was her position as a feminist, because feminism as a movement began much later. Still, we find the traces of feminism in Jane Austen. Because when you see a female author is writing about females or women, naturally it is feminist. Okay, so this aspect of her writing also opened the floodgates of criticism. Writers like Mark Twain and Joseph Conrad found her lacking in patience. She was often criticized for limiting herself to the trivial round of provincial life, her snobbery, and for her complete indifference to the contemporary political situations, as I mentioned earlier, like the Napoleonic War or the French Revolution. But within her sphere, she was faultless. One has to admit that within her sphere, she was faultless. And with her perfect sense of style and timing, she revealed the characters by the slightest mannerism. So one is delighted when one reads Jane Austen's novel. Then we also, let's not discuss the novels in detail, because I think you know that in Sense and Sensibility, two characters are there. It's the story of two sisters, like Elinor and Marianne. Elinor stands for sensible. Okay, she was sensible. She stands for sense. While Mariana stands for sensibility. She was sensitive. But in the end of the novel, we find that their characters are reversed. Because though Elinor talked of sense, she married for love. And the sensibility or the sensitive Marianne married a rich person. Then Pride and Prejudice is undoubtedly Austen's masterpiece. And initially it was named First Impression. And we all know that the central character, the Elizabeth Bennet, and whom Austen herself considered to be her favorite heroine. So it's a very interesting novel which we are going to discuss today, the Mansfield Park. Mansfield Park has in its tone and discussion of moral issues and moral duties the most serious of Austen's novel. And the heroine Fanny Price is a self-effacing poor cousin cared for by the Bertram family in their country house. And her moral strength eventually wins her the complete acceptance of the family. So here we see Mansfield Park shows an advance in we see social mobility here, and also it is we find the psychological depth and complexity in this particular novel. Then Emma was begun in January 1814, and it was completed in 1816. The author said that she feared that nobody but herself would like the heroine Emma Woodhouse. Emma is another much talked about novel of Jane Austen. Emma Woodhouse is a rich girl and she changes from being vain and self-satisfied, blind to her own feeling and insensitive to those of others in a slow, painful progress towards maturity. So here we find the heroines, in fact in all the novels of Jane Austen, we find that the heroines, they gradually learn and they mature. They learn through experience. Persuasion is Austen's last completed novel, and it is also concerned with love, vanity, pride, and true understanding. The heroine, Annie Elliot, is remarkable for being both good and outgoing. So, Jane Austen's world is full of bright, intelligent, and pretty heroines, and who makes the proper match. So it is in short about the books by Jane Austen. Did you remember the 6 novels? I told you in the last class also, the people who read literature, other people they love to read, but the students of literature, they live to read. If they don't read, they die. So you don't have, you just not have, you have to read not only the prescribed text, you have to go beyond the text and read. For example, when you have been prescribed only Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, you have to also get Emma, Persuasion, Mansfield Park, Sense and Sensibility, and read all those. And I can challenge that you will love to read all the novels, and it will not take more than 10 days to complete all the novels of Jane Austen. Then let's come to the rise of novel in connection with Austen's work and the development of realist novel. It is a part of your IGNOU material, the development of realist novel and Austen's work in Unit 1. So Jane Austen consciously and deliberately identified herself with the 18th century tradition of realism in the novel, though she does not imitate the methods and techniques developed by her predecessors, like Fanny Burney or Maria Edgeworth. Instead, she makes creative use of an inherited tradition to deal with the issues and the problems of contemporary social development, to try and find a proper coming resolution to the conflicts. Next, let's come to Pride and Prejudice. It's a romantic novel of manners written by Jane Austen, as I told, and the novel follows the character development of mostly Elizabeth Bennet. When we read the novel, we see the world or the characters around through the eyes of Elizabeth Bennet, the dynamic protagonist of the book, who learns about the repercussion of hasty judgment and comes to appreciate the difference between superficial goodness and actual goodness. Okay, because initially she was prejudiced against Darcy, but she learned the difference between artificial or superficial goodness and actual or real goodness. All the Pride and Prejudice has been criticized for its lack of historical context. It is an accurate portrayal of the enclosed social world in which Austen lived. The novel has remained popular largely because of Elizabeth, who was Austen's favorite heroine. As I told you, she was the favorite heroine of Jane Austen. And Pride and Prejudice has received a very good reception throughout. It has consistently appeared near the top list of most loved book among the literary scholars and the reading public. It has become one of the most popular novels in English literature, and it has inspired many derivatives in modern literature. For more than a century, dramatic adaptation, reprints, or unofficial sequels, films, TV series of Pride and Prejudice have portrayed the memorable characters and the themes of the novel. It reached the mass audience. The book has reached the mass audience in different forms, in the form of TV series, films, and different theatrical performances. So the 2005 film Pride and Prejudice is the most recent film adaptation that closely represents the book. So the book has inspired a number of adaptations in print and in visual media. Then about the development of the novel, Austen began writing the novel after in 1796. And as I told you, it was originally titled First Impression. Then Austen's father wrote a letter to a bookseller to ask if he had any interest in seeing the manuscript, but the offer was declined by return post. Okay, so she wrote in the first draft. She wrote in 1796, and it was titled First Impression. Then Austen made significant revision of the manuscript between 1811 and 1812. Later, she renamed the story Pride and Prejudice, and she sold the rights to publish the manuscript to Thomas Egerton for only £110, of course, in those days. So, in renaming the novel, Austen probably had in mind the sufferings and the oppositions summarized in the final chapter of Fanny Burney's Cecilia. The title from Fanny Burney's Cecilia, called Pride and Prejudice, where the phrase Pride and Prejudice appeared 3 times in block capitals. Okay. So about the reception, the book was received well. Even Charlotte Bronte wrote about Pride and Prejudice, and she told that it was a kind of disappointment for her. Charlotte Bronte was of the view that it was a carefully fenced, highly cultivated garden with neat borders and delicate flowers, but no open country, no fresh air, no blue hill, and no bony bag. She criticized the book. Then Walter Scott phrased the book. He read again for the third time at least in Miss Austen's very finely written novel Pride and Prejudice. He wrote, before we begin reading the book, just I would quote from W.H. Auden. W.H. Auden wrote a poem on Austen. Just a few lines I would like to read from Auden. You could not shock her more than she shocked to me. Means Jane Austen shocks whom? Auden. Beside her joy seems innocent as grass. It makes me most uncomfortable to see an English spinster of the middle class describe the amorous effect of brass, reveal so frankly and with such sobriety the economic basis of society. So there can be Marxist criticism of Jane Austen also. Of course, we are going to discuss the modern approaches, the critical approaches towards the last part of our lecture. So let's come to the summary. Let's narrate the story. Before the story, it's always advisable to know about the characters so that you will not be confused in the middle of the reading. So let me sum up what we read till now. Till now, we discussed the introduction, or in introduction, we discussed about the context, the social cultural background of the period. Then we discussed about the author, Jane Austen, and her different novels. Then we are coming to the text of Pride and Prejudice. Before that, it is necessary to know about the characters. Let's discuss the characters. First, the Bennets. The Bennets. Mr. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, and the 5 daughters. Jane, the eldest daughter, who is beautiful and innocent, good looking. Then second daughter is Elizabeth Bennet, who is the heroine, the protagonist of the piece. And Elizabeth is inferior to Jane in beauty, but she is intelligent. Then the other girls are Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. All of them are silly. So this is Bennet family, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and their 5 daughters. Jane Bennet is the eldest daughter, and Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist of the book, is the second daughter. Then the Binksley. The Binksley. Mr. Binksley, who became a neighbor of this Bennet family. They came to the neighborhood. Mr. Bingley is a rich man, and who falls in love with Jane, the Bennet's eldest daughter. Then he has 2 sisters, Caroline Binksley and Lucia Hurst. Lucia Hurst because Lucia is married. Caroline is not married. So Binksley and his 2 sisters. Then we have the Darcys, the Darcy family. Mr. Darcy, who is the hero of the piece. Lady Anne Darcy, the mother, and Georgiana Darcy is the sister of Mr. Darcy. The full name of Mr. Darcy is Mr. Fish William Darcy. Mr. Fish William Darcy. And Georgiana Darcy is the sister of Mr. Darcy. Then Wickham is the villain. He is a military officer. Then Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a pompous man, a clergy, a priest, who proposes to Elizabeth, but he was rejected. Then we have the characters of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who is the patron of this Mr. Collins. And she has a daughter, Annie de Bourgh. And Lady Catherine wanted her daughter to be married to Darcy. Lady Catherine is the aunt of Mr. Darcy. Then we have the Lucases, the Lucas family, who are a neighbor of the Bennets. Sir William Lucas and Lady Lucas, the husband and wife, and their 2 daughters, Charlotte and Maria. Charlotte and Maria. And Charlotte is the friend of Elizabeth. After Elizabeth rejected Mr. Collins, Charlotte decided to marry Mr. Collins. And in fact, she married Mr. Collins. Then we have the character of Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, who live in the town, and they are the relations of the Bennets. Then we have Cornel Fitzwilliam. Cornel Fitzwilliam, who is a cousin of Darcy. These are the major characters. Did you get it? All of you? So prominently we have the Bennet family, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. They have 5 daughters. Then the Winsley, Mr. Winsley, who is a young man, and his 2 sisters, the Darcys. Another hero is Mr. Darcy and his sister Georgiana Darcy and their mother. Then Wickham is a military officer who can be called the antagonist, the villain of the piece. Then we have a pompous, caricature-like character, Mr. Collins. We have Lady Catherine de Bourgh and her daughter Annie de Bourgh, who are the relations of Darcy. They are rich people. Then the Lucases are the neighbors of the Bennets. And Charlotte, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Lucas, is a friend of Elizabeth. Excuse me. Just a second, please. Okay, so these are the characters. Let's read the story. Did you get the characters, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. Shall we proceed with the summary? Okay. So, Mr. Bennet. Mr. Bennet of Longbourn Estate has 5 daughters. As I named them, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. But his property is entailed and can only be passed to a male heir. Heir, H-E-I-R. It is not pronounced here, it is pronounced heir, and the H is silent. Heir for successor, H-E-I-R. So his wife also left Mrs. Bennet also left an inheritance. So his family will be destitute upon his death. Thus it is imperative that at least one of the girls marry well to support the others, okay, which is a motivation that drives the plot of Pride and Prejudice. The novel revolves around the importance of marrying for love, not for money or social prestige, despite the communal pressure to make a wealthy match. And the novel is set in rural England in early 19th century, mostly in Hertfordshire or Derbyshire. And Mrs. Bennet tries to persuade Mr. Bennet to visit Mr. Winsley. In the beginning of the story, Mrs. Bennet tries to persuade Mr. Bennet to visit Mr. Winsley, who is a rich bachelor. And he had recently arrived in the neighborhood. After some verbal sparring with her husband, Mrs. Bennet believed that he will not call on Mr. Winsley. Shortly afterward, he visits Netherfield, or Mr. Bennet visited Netherfield and Mr. Winsley rented residence, much to the delight of Mrs. Bennet, because Mrs. Bennet believed that Mr. Winsley can be a suitor, can be a husband to one of her daughters. And this visit is followed by an invitation to a ball party, B-A-L-L. Ball parties were prevalent in those days. So they were invited to a ball party at a local assembly room, and the entire neighborhood will attend that ball party. And that party was thrown by Mr. Winsley. So first, Mr. Bennet visited Mr. Winsley, and the Bennets are invited to a party, a ball party thrown by Mr. Winsley. Got it? And at that ball party, Mr. Winsley's friendly and cheerful manner makes him popular with the guests, and he appears attracted to Jane Bennet, the eldest daughter of the Bennets, with whom he dances twice. Winsley's friend, Mr. Darcy, he was much wealthier than the Winsley, but he was found to be proud. And when he declined to dance with Elizabeth, when Winsley suggested that he should dance with Elizabeth, he declined it. And he said that she's not attractive enough to tempt me. He said, or Darcy said about Elizabeth, that she is not attractive enough to tempt him. And Elizabeth could hear it, and her pride was hurt. This is the beginning of a war between pride and prejudice. Then one has to ask, whose pride and who is prejudiced? Is it that simple that Elizabeth was prejudiced against Darcy? Or Darcy was proud? Elizabeth's pride was not involved? We have to ask these questions. Let's move on with the story for now. Then Mr. Winsley's sister Caroline later invited Jane to Netherfield for dinner. On her way there, Jane is caught in a rain, or she got sour and develops a bad cold, forcing her to stay at Netherfield to recover. So Jane visited Mr. Winsley's home, was caught in rain on the way, was unwell, stayed there till she recovered. When Elizabeth goes to see Jane, Mr. Darcy finds himself becoming attracted towards Elizabeth. And he stated that she has fine eyes. This is the beginning of the attraction. He found her fine eyes attractive. While Miss Winsley grows jealous because Miss Caroline Winsley, she wanted to marry Darcy. And she herself, as I told, designs on Mr. Darcy. So she grew jealous. Then we have the character of Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is Mr. Bennet's cousin. And he is the heir, the successor to their estate. He visits the Bennet family. He is pompous. He is a pompous clergyman, a priest who intends to marry one of the Bennet's girls. And after learning that Jane may soon be engaged, he quickly decides to marry Elizabeth, the next daughter in both age and beauty. In the meantime, we find that Elizabeth and her family meet the dancing and the charming army officer, George Wickham. George Wickham, he was handsome and he was an army officer. One can be misled by the appearance. And he developed a kind of friendship with Elizabeth. He says he is connected to the Darcy family and claims Mr. Darcy deprived him of an occupation and a permanent position as a clergyman in a prosperous parish with good revenue, promised to him by Mr. Darcy's late father. So he said that Mr. Darcy did injustice to him, and Elizabeth's dislike of Mr. Darcy is confirmed. So how the prejudice grew. Then at the ball soon after that, at the ball at Netherfield, Mr. Darcy asked Elizabeth to dance. And despite her promise never to dance with him, she accepts. Excluding Jane and Elizabeth, several Bennet family members displayed a distinct lack of decorum. Mrs. Bennet was loud, always loud. She hints loudly that she fully expects Jane and Wingley to become engaged, because we found that Wingley was attracted towards Jane. And Mrs. Bennet announced that soon they will get engaged. And the younger Bennet sisters, they exposed the family to ridicule by their silliness. They displayed silly behavior. And the word accomplishment carried a different meaning in 18th century. During the time of Jane Austen, women were supposed to be accomplished. There were a number of qualities attached to the word accomplishment. The decorum, the good behavior, and the Bennet daughters, the younger three, they lacked it. So Mr. Collins proposes to Elizabeth. Okay, after that, Mr. Collins proposes to Elizabeth, a clergyman who would inherit the property of Elizabeth's father. And she rejects him instantly, to her mother's fury and her father's relief. The father was relieved because he did not want his daughter to marry a cartoon, a buffoon, a caricature. Shortly afterward, the Wingsters suddenly depart for London with no plans to return. And after Elizabeth's rejection, Mr. Collins proposes to Charlotte Lucas. I told you about Lucas, the Lucas family, and Charlotte Lucas was a friend of Elizabeth. Charlotte was a sensible young woman, and she was Elizabeth's friend. She was aged 27, and she was grateful for the proposal because it guaranteed her a comfortable home. And in this acceptance of Charlotte, means the proposal of Collins by Charlotte, it throws light on the status of women of the time. Because she was without any inheritance. So she saw that the marriage promised her a comfortable living, a comfortable home. So she accepted, though she did not love Mr. Collins. And Elizabeth is aghast at such pragmatism in the matter of love. Meanwhile, a heartbroken Jane visits her aunt and uncle, the Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner in London. So we know that Mr. Wingsley left the countryside for London and he is not planning to return. So we find a break to the affair between Jane and Wingsley. In the spring, Elizabeth visits Charlotte and Mr. Collins in Kent. And Elizabeth and her host are invited to Rogings Park. Rogings Park is the house of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who was the patroness of Mr. Collins and who was the aunt of Mr. Darcy. Lady Catherine expects Mr. Darcy to marry her daughter Annie. Because it was planned in the childhood by the aunt and the mother. And Mr. Darcy and his cousin Cornel Fitzwilliam are also visiting at Rogings Park, while while Elizabeth was with Charlotte and Mr. Collins at their home, and she visited Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who was also a relation of Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy also visited the place with his cousin, Mr. Fitzwilliam or Cornel Fitzwilliam. Did you get the story? Okay, after one more paragraph, I'll quickly sum up. And there, Mr. Fitzwilliam talked to Elizabeth, and he said how Mr. Darcy recently saved a friend, and presumably Bingley, from an undesirable match. Elizabeth soon realized that the prevented engagement was of Jane and Bingley, and she is horrified that Mr. Darcy interfered. Later, during that visit, Mr. Darcy proposed to Elizabeth, and while proposing, he declared his love for her despite her inferior social rank. He mentioned that despite she is socially inferior to him, he cannot help but falling in love with her. She rejects him angrily, stating she could never love a man who caused her sister such unhappiness and further accuses him of treating Wickham unjustly. So let me sum up the story till now from the beginning. In the beginning, we find that Mr. and Mrs. Bennet has 5 daughters, and they are apprehensive that they will be left poor after the death of Mr. Bennet, because the property will be transferred to Mr. Collins, who was the successor of that estate. So Mrs. Bennet wanted Elizabeth, Jane and other daughters to marry well, and they found that Mr. Wingsley cheated the neighborhood.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. This is
Yes.
Prejudice 1, na? Prejudice 1.
We are
This
discussing
story is Pride and Prejudice 1 or 2?
we are discussing the story of Pride and Prejudice. I'm not going chapter wise because it's a long
Okay.
story and we can't cover everything within 2 hours because we have to discuss the characters, the themes, the narrative techniques as well. So I'm making it short. You just follow the story, remember the story so that you will be able to understand the IGNOU material that has been supplied to you. Because in that material you will get a kind of critical analysis of the whole thing. So it's better to know the story first, then go for the materials or read the materials. Right? Okay. So Mr. Winsley visited the neighborhood and Mrs. Bennet wanted one of her daughters to marry Mr. Winsley. They visited, they exchanged visit and it became apparent that Winsley had weakness for Jane, the eldest daughter of the Bennets. In the meantime, we find that the pride of Elizabeth is hurt by Mr. Darcy, who is also a rich person, but he was believed to be very proud. Then Mr. Collins visited and he proposed to Elizabeth and she rejected. After that, her friend Charlotte married Mr. Collins because she had practical reasons, not for love. Then Elizabeth visits her friend Charlotte and we find that Mr. Collins was living in the estate of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Lady Catherine de Bourgh was the aunt of Darcy. So while Elizabeth was there, Darcy also visited the place with his cousin, Mr. Fitzwilliam. And during the visit, Darcy proposed Elizabeth. During the visit, Darcy proposed Elizabeth, but she rejected. She rejected angrily and she had two causes. One is Darcy was responsible for the estrangement of Jane from Winsley, and second, she accused him of mistreating or ill-treating Wickham, that military officer. Later, Darcy gives Elizabeth a letter explaining that Wickham, the son of his late father Stuart, had refused the living his father arranged for him and was instead given money for it. But Wickham quickly squandered the whole money and asked for living again. So after being refused, he tried to elope with Darcy's 15-year-old sister Georgiana, who Wickham tried to elope with the 15-year-old sister of Darcy, Georgiana, for her considerable dowry. Mr. Darcy also wrote in that letter that he separated Jane and Winsley due to Jane's reserved behavior because Jane did not show her behavior. Her behavior did not show that she was in love with Winsley. He sincerely believed her indifference to Winsley and also because of the lack of propriety of the other members of her family. So, Darcy was quite candid in his letter. Even she confided Elizabeth with this news that Wickham was trying to elope with his sister. After some months, Elizabeth accompanies the Gardiners, her uncles and aunts, on a tour to Derbyshire, which was the home of Darcy. They visit Pemberley, the Darcy estate. After Elizabeth confirms that Mr. Darcy was not there, the housekeeper there describes Mr. Darcy as a very kind and generous gentleman, recounting several examples of his generous behavior or nature. When Mr. Darcy returns unexpectedly, during the course of that visit, when Elizabeth was at Pemberley, Darcy suddenly returns and he is exceedingly gracious. He really invites Elizabeth and the Gardiners to meet his sister and Mr. Gardiner to go for fishing. Elizabeth is surprised and delighted by their treatment. Then she received the news that Lydia had run off with Wickham. That Wickham was really wicked. So he had eloped with Lydia, the youngest daughter of the Bennets. She tells Mr. Darcy immediately and then departs in haste. Okay, so Elizabeth trusted Darcy with the news of Lydia running off with Wickham. After that, she departs. Then, after an agonizing interim, there is some gap in the story, and we find that Wickham has agreed to marry Lydia. Later, Lydia visits the family, the Bennet family, and tells Elizabeth that Mr. Darcy was at her wedding. Though Mr. Darcy had sworn everyone involved to secrecy, Mrs. Gardiner now feels obliged to inform Elizabeth that he secured the match. At great expense, he even gave money to Wickham. That's why he agreed to marry Lydia. She hints that he may have another motive for having done so, implying that she believes Darcy to be in love with Elizabeth. Okay. Then Mr. Weasley and Mr. Darcy return to Netherfield. Then we find the resolution of the whole story. Weasley proposes to Jane and who accepts. And Darcy conveyed the truth to Weasley. After that, they return to Netherfield and Weasley proposes to Jane and she's happy and she happily accepts. Lady Catherine, having heard rumors that Elizabeth intends to marry Mr. Darcy, visits Elizabeth. And she demanded from her the promise never to accept Mr. Darcy's proposal. But she refused. Elizabeth refused. And the outraged Lady Catherine leaves. Darcy, this news was conveyed to Darcy. Her aunt conveyed the news that Elizabeth did not refuse, did not promise her not to marry Darcy. That news came to Darcy. So he was hopeful again, and again he proposed her, and he was accepted. Elizabeth had difficulty in convincing her father that she is marrying for love, not position and wealth. But Mr. Bennet is finally convinced. So Mrs. Bennet is exceedingly happy to learn of her daughter's marriage to Mr. Darcy, not because she is in love with Darcy, but because he was a rich groom. And she quickly changed her opinion of him. The novel concludes with an overview of the marriages of three daughters, Jane to Kingsley, Elizabeth to Darcy, and the youngest Lydia to Wickham. And the great satisfaction of both the parents are the fine happy matches made by Jane and Elizabeth. So this is the story of Pride and Prejudice. It's a very engaging story. Okay, one cannot leave the story or the book in the middle. Then in the last class also we talked about the questions of the previous years, because practically you are reading for the exams, that we have to acknowledge. So let's have a look at the previous year's questions on Pride and Prejudice. First, identify the chief features of love and marriage in Pride and Prejudice. So it's a question on theme of love and marriage. The next one, discuss the themes of love and marriage in Pride and Prejudice with special reference to the characters of Elizabeth and Darcy. Again on the theme of love and marriage. Then Pride and Prejudice reflects class and gender, the treatment of class and gender. Next, discuss the socio-economic position of women as brought out in Pride and Prejudice. This was a question in December 16. Next, discuss the narrative technique in Pride and Prejudice. How does it influence the reader's reaction to the novel? Then we have identify the chief features of Jane Austen's treatment of love and marriage in Pride and Prejudice. So, in many years, we have the same question, the theme of love and marriage. So, what do you think of Jane Austen's characterization of women in Pride and Prejudice? Then we have discussed the themes of education and accomplishment in Pride and Prejudice. As I told you, education and accomplishment were two key words. The education of women was treated differently from the education of men, and accomplishment had a different connotation or a specific connotation in the context of 18th century. That we have to find out from the context, from the historical background. The Pride and Prejudice brings out Jane Austen's belief in the important role of education in forming a person's character. Next question, examine Jane Austen's treatment of love and marriage again. Then the next question is on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice successfully presents a world of domestic and social comment. Then discuss Jane Austen's treatment of love in Pride and Prejudice. Next question, comment on the use of wit and irony in Pride and Prejudice. Then bring out the significance of pride in Pride and Prejudice. Whose pride? Is it the pride of Darcy only, or the pride of all other characters are involved? Then discuss the narrative techniques used in Pride and Prejudice. And the June 19 question was, would it be correct to say the social issues occupy a prominent space in Pride and Prejudice? Discuss. So when we analyze the questions, we find that we get questions on characters, themes, and narrative techniques. I told you that in the last class also. So when you prepare for the exam, you have to prepare questions on characters. When we talk of the characters of Pride and Prejudice, the character of Elizabeth Bennet, the character of Darcy, the two main protagonists. Then we can talk about the female characters. We can talk about the male characters. We can talk about the minor characters. So let's begin with the characters first. Then we'll move on to theme, then to narrative techniques. While discussing the characters in the novel, you must have heard about the flat and the round. The flat characters and the round character. It was a categorization in E.M. Forster's The Aspect of Novel. In The Aspect of Novel, E.M. Forster talked about or provided the terms flat and round as a tool for the analysis of fictional characters. A flat character is one who does not change in the course of the fiction, where he or she is found and is a type with a few or often only one prominent features. So a flat character does not change, and we find a prominent thing in the character. On the other hand, a round character is one who changes and develops as the story or the play progresses. When we talk of Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Collins is a flat character. Mrs. Bennet is a flat character, apparently on the surface. But when we talk of Darcy and Elizabeth, they are round characters because they develop. So a flat character could be evidence that the novelist is trying to focus on a particular quality or a state of mind, while the use of round character could indicate an effort to show personal growth, as happens with Elizabeth. So Forster goes on to specify that none of Jane Austen's character could really be called flat, not even Collins or Mrs. Bennet. She never stooped to caricature. So this opinion has been contested by critics. Mr. E.M. Forster said that all the characters of Jane Austen are round characters. These are materials from your IGNOU materials. These are things which you will find in the IGNOU material while discussing the characters of the novel. Flat character and round character. And what was E.M. Forster's views on the characters of Jane Austen. But this opinion has been contested, have been contradicted by other critics who divided the characters of Jane Austen into morally admirable and morally reprehensible. Okay. But one thing is important in the context. When the novel is viewed as a comedy of manners, its characters are not seen as having any existence except or independent of the community of which they form a part. The characters are seen in within the community. not in isolation from the community. Let's have a few words about the different major characters. Let's begin with Elizabeth Bennet. So the novel's protagonist, Elizabeth Bennet, is the second daughter of Mr. Bennet. Elizabeth is the most intelligent and the sensible of the 5 Bennet sisters. And she is well read. She is quick-witted. Okay. Remember these qualities, because after reading this, we are going to discuss something important. With a tongue that occasionally proves too sharp, she is straightforward sometimes. A realization of Darcy's essential goodness eventually triumphs over her initial prejudice against him. Then Fitzwilliam Darcy, the protagonist, the male protagonist, is a wealthy gentleman, a master of family. Though Darcy is intelligent and honest, his excess of pride causes him to look down on his social inferior. But over the course of the novel, he tempers his class consciousness and learns to admire and love Elizabeth, which is much below him in social status. But he loved Elizabeth for her strong character. Then we have Jane Bennet, the eldest and the most beautiful of the Bennet sisters. Jane is more reserved and gentler than Elizabeth. The easy pleasantness with which she and Bingley interact contrasts starkly with the mutual distaste that marks the encounters between Elizabeth and Darcy. Then Charles Kingsley is cast in opposition to Jane Bennet. So Jane Bennet and Charles Kingsley form a pair, and Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet, they form a pair. Charles Kingsley is a wealthy friend of Darcy, and his purchase of Netherfield and estate near the Bennets serves as an impetus for the novel. He is a genial, well-intentioned gentleman whose easygoing nature contrasts with Darcy's initially discourteous manners, and he is blissfully uncaring about class differences. Then we have Mr. Bennet, the patriarch of the Bennet family. He is a gentleman of modest income with 5 unmarried daughters. Mr. Bennet is sarcastic. He has a cynical sense of humor, okay, and who purposefully irritate his wife. And then Mrs. Bennet is a foolish, noisy woman whose only goal in life is to see her daughters married. Then we have Judge Wickham, a handsome fortune-hunting militia officer. He is a wicked person, but his good looks and his charm attracts Elizabeth initially, and she believed in him. But Darcy's revelation about Wickham's disreputable past shows his true nature. Then Lydia Bennet and all these characters are there, which we have already talked about. So when you prepare answer for the exam, include in your answer something about round and flat character. You can get something on the hero and the heroines like Darcy and Elizabeth that you have to prepare. Let's leave it. So characters. Then we have the main themes and in Pride and Prejudice. The term theme, when used in relation to a literary text, has been variously used to mean an argument, a claim, or an issue raised in the text. Themes are the fundamental and the often universal ideas explored in a literary work. So themes are important. Let's begin with the title of Pride and Prejudice. The title of the novel may not provide an instant clue to the meaning of the text, but it does indicate at least one thing in fairly unambiguous terms, offering an indication to the text's chief concerns as well as a useful starting point for the study of them. The title should not be misread to mean that Jane Austen is dealing here with 2 entities called Pride and Prejudice, which are independent of each other and exist separately in personalities and behavior of different characters. Both pride and prejudice can exist in the same character. It would, for example, be too simple to assume that Darcy embodies pride and Elizabeth prejudice. It soon becomes clear that the text, that prejudice is largely considered as a consequence of pride also, because Elizabeth was proud and her pride was hurt by the remark of Darcy that she was not beautiful enough to tempt him. Because her pride was hurt, that's why she developed the prejudice against Darcy. So pride shows itself in weakness, pomposity, stupidity, snobbery, eccentricity in all other characters, okay, which may make the character's behavior uh, look funny or ridiculous. It can also produce a sense of frivolity, like in Lydia. So pride and prejudice are not terms which exist in opposition to each other, rather they are blended. And both can exist in one person. We often get questions on women and marriage, or Jane Austen's treatment of love and marriage. One more thing about Pride and Prejudice, the title of Jane Austen, the title Jane Austen gave to the first draft of the novel was First Impressions. So the novel persistently brings to our notice the unreliability of first impression. The first impressions are not always reliable, even those of intelligent and observant people like Elizabeth and Darcy. Then women in marriage. A consideration of the social and economic realities of the women's lives in Jane Austen's time is useful. It's very necessary to understand the social and economic conditions of women at the time of Jane Austen, to understand the text of Pride and Prejudice. Women were extremely dependent on marriage because they had not the inheritance to property. Women were extremely dependent on marriage, and their education aimed at preparing them for this role alone. The education of women was not for profession, and men and women, they received different education. Women received education to prepare them for domestic life, to make them more attractive to men. They were also supposed to cultivate to the same end, okay, to make themselves attractive to men and affect their delicacy and helplessness. Women are supposed to be delicate, innocent, meek, mild creatures, and these qualities were considered feminine, the loss of which was feared by many. Would means they thought that the loss of these qualities can may prevent them from finding a match. Among the most influential of such books was Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. This was what I wanted to discuss. Mary Wollstonecraft and wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792. In 1792. So Mary Wollstonecraft and Jane Austen were contemporaries, but we do not know whether they knew each other or not. Because the time period of Mary Wollstonecraft was, she was born in 1759 and died in 1797. Jane Austen was also living at the same time. And Mary Wollstonecraft wrote A Vindication of the Right of Women, which is considered one of the first books on feminism. Though feminism as a movement came much earlier, as I told. So I would like to say something about this book, because it is not a novel, A Vindication of the Rights of Women. Rather, it portrays the condition, the status of women of the time. The book was published in 1792, remember, 1792, A Vindication of the Rights of Women by Mary Wollstonecraft. As I told you, it was the age of enlightenment. And Jane Austen also lived through the age of enlightenment. And reason was a key word. R-E-A-S-O-N, reason, rationality was a key word. When we read the novels of Jane Austen also, we find that the judgment of the characters or their opinion, their views are governed by region, not by sensibility, very often. And Mary Wollstonecraft wrote a vindication in retaliation to a pamphlet written by M. Talleyrand Farragut, who wrote a pamphlet and he sent it to French National Assembly. And he stated in that pamphlet that women should receive only a domestic education, which will make them fit for domestic life. So, a vindication was a revenge to that particular pamphlet. And in that book, Mary Wollstonecraft has addressed the middle class women in particular. She has mentioned, and we know that in 18th century, there was a growth of a rise of middle class. So see how the text and the context, the historical background, all these are connected. And Mary Wollstonecraft was against making women weak. She said that they should have strength of both body and mind. In chapter 1, she emphasized three features, three qualities: reason, virtue, and knowledge. Reason, virtue, and knowledge. These are the three elements that distinguish an individual from a lower animal. But when it comes to men and women, the parameter differs. Men are associated with reason, virtue, and knowledge. But when we speak of women or the feminine qualities, we talk of innocence, beauty, obedience, all these. So she questions how can there be different parameter of virtue for both men and women? This timidity, meekness, and modesty are not virtue. And Mary Wollstonecraft in that particular book advocated education for women. Education for women. Particularly in chapter 2 of Vindication, Mary Wollstonecraft talked about the prevailing opinion about sexual difference. Means the prevailing notion means the notion at that time, in her time, about sexual difference. And she says that women were kept ignorant under the level of innocence. Grace, beauty, and modesty were considered to be the chief qualities of women. She said, we Milton insulted women. How Milton insulted women? Can you tell me anyone in Paradise Lost? Yes? Please respond. Mary Wollstonecraft, in Vindication of the Rights of Women, said that Milton insulted women in Paradise Lost. Have you any idea of the story of Paradise Lost, the story of Eve and Adam? Then Satan came to their life, persuaded Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge? No. Okay, let me tell you in 2-3 sentences. Mary Wollstonecraft believed that Milton insulted women because he created Eve, from the ribs of Adam. And Adam and Eve are believed to be the first man and the first woman. So the first woman was created by God from the rib of men. So it was insulting to women. Then Mary Wollstonecraft dismisses the views of men about women. She said that virtue in men and women cannot be different. There should be the same parameter. And she advocated and she greatly emphasized reason, understanding, and the education of women. Women should receive the same education like men, so that they will make companion to men. She said that beauty may fade, but if the mind is rich, then it will breed or it will lead to friendship between men and women, and it will last forever. Even the passive obedience, if passive obedience will be the attribute of women, they will not be able to educate children and manage the family. So she emphasized education. In the same way, Jane Austen also emphasized education of women. All her heroines are well read, though they received a domestic education. even she herself received a domestic education. Then let's talk about the different themes of, what's the time? We steal the time. But I'll finish in 5 minutes so that we can have the discussion. So in Pride and Prejudice, as theme we find love, marriage, and in the very opening line of the novel, it famously announced that it's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. And this sets the marriage as a motive, a recurring image, and a problem in the novel. And readers often stop to question whether or not this single man need a wife, or if the need is dictated by the neighborhood families and their daughters who require a good fortune. Because we find that Mrs. Bennet was trying to find a good match for her daughters with a good fortune. Okay. Then wealth is an issue here. Money plays a fundamental role in the marriage market for a young lady seeking well-off husband and men who wish to marry a woman of means. So Judge Wickham tries to elope with Georgiana Darcy because she was rich. Or Colonel Fitzwilliam married for money to Annie Devon. Marrying a woman of a rich family also ensured a linkage to high family. Okay. So inheritance laws benefited males because most women did not have independent legal rights until the second half of 19th century, and women's financial security depended on men. That's why there was a major emphasis on marriage and finding a good husband for security, as Charlotte did in Pride and Prejudice. Then the reputation is a major issue. Pride and Prejudice depicts a society in which a woman's reputation is of utmost importance. Next is class. Jane Austen has treated class. It's the class difference. The theme of class is related to reputation also, in that both reflect the strictly regimented nature of life for the middle and the upper classes in England. And the lines of class are strictly done, while the Banners, who are middle class, may socialize with the upper class, like the Winxley or the Darcys, but they are clearly socially inferior and are treated as such. And Austen satirizes this kind of class consciousness, particularly in the character of Mr. Collins, who spent most of his time praising or even worshipping his patron, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. But through the Darcy, Elizabeth, or Winxley Jane marriages, Austen shows the power of love and happiness to overcome the class boundaries and the prejudices. So, class is a major issue in Pride and Prejudice. Then family is an integral theme in the novel. All the characters, they operate within the network of family connections that shape their decisions and perspectives. For the female characters in particular, the influence and the behavior of their family members is a significant feature or a factor in their lives. So when you write about theme, you may get a question on a particular theme, or you may get a general question on themes. Gender is a major issue here. Let's leave this. Then self-knowledge. Towards the end of the story, we find that through their interaction and their critiques of each other, Darcy and Elizabeth, they come to recognize their fault and work to correct them. So other characters rarely exhibit this depth of understanding, or at least are not given the space within the novel to show their development of character. And coming to the narrative technique in Pride and Prejudice, it's a simple narrative, an engaging narrative. Like most of Austen works, it employs the narrative technique free indirect speech. Then David Lodge, in a reading of Jane Austen, which draws upon formalist and the structuralist criticism, shows how she incorporates elements of sentimental novel and the comedy of manners into the method of realism. So she believed in realism, and also we find elements of sentimental novels and comedy of manners in her works. The three of the principal sources of interest in Jane Austen's narrative were suspense, mystery, and irony. I repeat, suspense, mystery, and irony. The first raises the questions, what will happen? Suspense. And mystery raises the question, why did it happen? Then irony is created when the reader knows the answers to the questions, but the characters don't know. So in the plot of Pride and Prejudice, we find all the three: suspense, mystery, and irony, which makes the book interesting, or which makes the narrative interesting. We also find the use of wit and irony. Wit. In the talk of Darcy and Elizabeth, we find the use of wit. Then, the critical perspective. So far, we have talked about the background to the novel, social, cultural, and the.
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. What is
yes,
wits,
yes,
ma'am?
please.
You are saying use of wits.
Yes, W-I-T, wit, intelligence. Intelligence,
Yes.
wit, witty talk, W-I-T, wit, intelligent talk, intelligent talk. When we talk with each other, some people, when they talk, they use wit, intelligence. When you see the dialogues or the narratives of the story, the Pride and Prejudice, when Darcy and Elizabeth are talking, you will find witty talk. Even wit was a major feature of restoration drama. The witty repartees, the play of words, wit, intelligence.
Ma'am.
Yes, right? Did you get it? Yes,
Thank you,
did
ma'am.
you get it?
Thank you. Yes.
Witty dialogues, we can say. Then we talk about in the last part of the Igno material, you find critical perspective. The critical perspective on Pride and Prejudice. And there we have the Marxist approach, the post-colonial reading of Pride and Prejudice, and the feminist approach. So feminist approach to Pride and Prejudice can be a question, post-colonial reading of Pride and Prejudice can be a question, and Marxist approach to Pride and Prejudice can be another question. These are all recent critical perspective on Pride and Prejudice. Feminist approach, it is often questioned whether Jane Austen was a feminist or not. Some people say, or some critics say, she was a feminist because to write novels about women at that time with women protagonists who were not just paragons of beauty, they were witty, intelligent creatures, was feminist. So beginning with Virginia, let's talk about the feminist approach to Pride and Prejudice. Beginning with Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, and including the work of Kate Millett, Ellen Salter, or the feminist reading of Jane Austen covered a field as wide as many stands and very concerned of feminist thought. So many critics have read Jane Austen from a feminist perspective. The problem areas for feminist criticism of Jane Austen have tended to be her ignoring the sexual activity. The stress is on the absence of female sexuality and the female body, and also her political conservatism. So it is accepted, it is thought as the acceptance of dominant patriarchal ideology. Then Ellen Salter, in A Literature of Their Own, she said that she talked about the feminists and the feminine stage, the three stages of feminism. the female stage, the feminine stage, the feminist stage, and the female stage, 3 stages. And she says that Jane Austen's novel belonged to the feminine stage. And I repeat, at that time, feminism was not a conscious movement. Jane Austen has also been accused of restricting women to domesticity in her fiction because she appears to leave out politics and religion almost completely. And she also avoids making any direct reference to major historical events like French Revolution, which took place in her lifetimes. Feminist criticism also looks at the ways in which women are stereotyped and constrained by patriarchal society. Because they lacked inheritance, they were limited by marriage, it seems. Austen has been accused of ignoring sexuality, especially in the portrayal of women, and there may be some truth in this. But as far as the treatment of women's sexuality is concerned, Lydia is a clear example to the contrary. She was animalist. She fled. She ran away. So all these are discussed when we go for a feminist reading of Jane Austen. Then the post-colonial. Yes, one thing I think I told you that when Austen published her novels, she did not mention her name because it was very difficult in those days to publish as a woman author. So the first one, Sense and Sensibility, was an anonymous author. And when she published Pride and Prejudice, in the place of the author's name, it was written from the author of Sense and Sensibility. That means Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice has the same author, but it was not published under the name Jane Austen. We have to think about the status of women at that time. Then the post-colonial reading. Post-colonialism sees a connection between the growth of English novel and that of the empire. The growth of English novel and the growth of English empire are simultaneous. But how much of this applies to Jane Austen? We find very limited materials on post-colonial reading of Jane Austen. In fact, when we read Kipling or Conrad, Joseph Conrad or Henry Kipling, we find the elements of imperialism. We can have a post-colonial reading of these authors. Marxist criticism. When you deal with money and class, naturally Marxism will come. So Jane Austen has been criticized since she does not appear to take for granted the existence of, she appears to take for granted the existence of class society. Though she does not necessarily see it as static or fixed, because one can always move upward through marriage in case of women. So Marxist readings of fictional text also require that attention be paid to the role of money in the text and how the characters' lives are determined by their class and economic status. So we can also have a feminist reading of Pride and Prejudice. Because we have limited time, we will keep the rest of the class for discussion. So let me quickly sum up things. So in the beginning, we discussed the historical, cultural, and social background of the period of Jane Austen. Then we discussed Jane Austen as an author, about her 6 novels. Then we discussed the story, the summary of Pride and Prejudice. Then we discussed the questions, the previous year questions on Pride and Prejudice, and we found something in common, like the question on the theme of love and marriage have been repeated. So we find questions on themes, narrative techniques, and characters. For all the novels, you have to prepare questions on themes, characters, and narrative techniques. So when you go to IGNOU material in particular, the unit 1 is on the novel in the context, where you get an account of the 18th century Europe, the conditions in England. It also talks about the Enlightenment with its emphasis on region, rationality. Then the period or her period also marked the beginning of Romanticism because she published all her novels in the first part or in the beginning of the Romantic age. Then Jane Austen's work in the context of the Romantic movement, the rise of novel, and how Jane Austen has portrayed the realist novel. So we also get a glimpse of Jane Austen's life and work, the background in Unit 1 of Ignometrial, remember. For background studies of Pride and Prejudice, you have to read Unit 1. And I must tell you that you have to, those who have not read Pride and Prejudice till now, you download the book from the internet. It is available on the internet. You can read it on your phone or also on your computer or laptop. So read the book. You will finish it in 1 or 2 days because it makes a very interesting reading. Then Unit 2 of Ignometrial is on main themes in Pride and Prejudice. Like the two main themes are pride and prejudice. Isn't it? The two main things in Pride and Prejudice are pride and prejudice. So sometimes you may get a question, analyze the title. So when you analyze the title, you have to write about the theme also. Because those two key words constitute the theme of the novel. Then the characters are also related to the theme. The theme of love and marriage is already there. You can get it in Unit 2. Ignometrial, Unit 2, you can get love and marriage, the treatment of love and marriage. Themes are carried forward in the Ignometrial in Unit 3 as well. Here you know about women, their social position, education and accomplishment. Also treatment of money and property. There is a separate section on money and property, under which you will read income, settlements, entails, inheritance, what were the laws at that time, how women were deprived of inheritance. So they had to seek good marriages to secure their future. So Jane Austen's novels were but a reflection of the time. She reflected what was going on in the society of the time, and in the process she criticized it. Her criticism was not vehement. She used or employed gentle irony to critique it. Unit 4 is about the characters in the novel, the 18th century ideas about character. I think we discussed about round character and flat character here. Ian Foster, that keep in mind, you can use it in your answers. Then the main characters in Pride and Prejudice, gender and character in Pride and Prejudice, these are the things you will find in Unit 4 of Ignometrial. And Unit 5 is about the narrative of Pride and Prejudice, or the narrative technique. How Jane Austen has used wit and irony in the narrative. So, all these, and the last unit, Unit 6, it's about the critical perspective. And in the critical perspective, or the criticism of Jane Austen by using different critical concepts or critical theories. 3 have been dealt with here: feminist approach, post-colonial reading, and the Marxist perspective. So you need not worry for the materials, because you get things or you get questions only from the Ignometrials. To develop understanding or a clarity of perspective, you need to read the background. So go to the background of Jane Austen's time, then read about the author and her other works. Because when you write answers on Pride and Prejudice, you can also compare it with Emma or Persuasion, because all the novels have similar theme. Also, when you quote and use from other novels, it shows that you are well read. So it's better to read other novels also, if you find time or if you can manage it. And you have to read it because you are doing your PG in English literature. And also, of course, this critical perspective, feminism, post-colonialism, and Marxism. So this is all about, you'll find it easy. You read the background, then read the novel, then simply read the IGNOU material. That's enough. Yes. Now I invite questions from you. If you have any doubt or if you have any query, please ask it. Yes? Please ask your questions. Yes, it's good that you are making a WhatsApp group. Okay. Now it is during this lockdown time, it's very important to make a WhatsApp group so that you can exchange materials. It's better to exchange materials, and even you can add me to the group so that I can send you some materials on these novels. That's my WhatsApp number, what has been provided to you. Because all the universities, they are making WhatsApp groups. Even in our university, we have different WhatsApp groups for PG and MPhil students, and it becomes easy when you take online classes. Just you can share the link in the WhatsApp group and can call the students anytime for a class.
Hello, ma'am.
Okay,
Hello,
tell
ma'am.
your questions, please.
Yes, ma'am. Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
One story. One stories are different story. Two stories. Pride and Prejudice. One and two. Two different given in the books. So that is one or different that are.
Pride and Prejudice is one book.
Yeah. No. I am asking about the that
I
is
didn't
two
get your
story.
question.
Two story or one story that both are. Pride and Prejudice, one or two, both are mentioned in the book, in the IGNOU study material. So both are one or same or different things.
I didn't get your question, but I'll try to answer. Do you mean that Pride and Prejudice are two different things?
No. Here, ma'am.
We have already discussed about it. Hmm?
Here
Yes,
is
please.
man theme in. Here is mentioned man theme in Pride and Prejudice one or man theme in Pride and Prejudice
Not
two
audible.
given in the book. So
In the book Pride and Prejudice,
man theme in
you are
Pride
not
and
audible
Prejudice
to me
one
actually.
and Pride and man theme in Pride and Prejudice two given in the book.
Okay. Yes, I understood. Yes,
Yes,
you have two units and themes.
yes, two
Then
and three.
mostly you get questions on themes. You have two books on themes. Yes, two books on theme, one on characters, one on narrative technique, one on background. The first unit is on the background, the context, and two units on themes, one unit on character, one on narrative technique, and the last unit is on critical perspective like feminism, post-colonialism, and Marxism. Or these Pride and Prejudice has been discussed with reference to these three critical theories.
But story is one, na ma'am.
Any other
Story is
question, please?
yes, and ma'am,
Story is one.
in
Yes.
the Pride and
Yes.
Prejudice, that is a focus on only Darcy and Elizabeth, na. Only the Darcy and the Elizabeth both are the main character in the story.
Yes,
Both are
both are
protagonists.
the protagonists. Yes, both are
Yes.
protagonists, and mostly we see the story from the point of view of Elizabeth Bennet.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, any other question?
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Did you understand the story? Yes, all of you. Just I wanted to know your feedback. Did you get it? The story and how to read it, how to prepare?
Hello, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes,
I
ma'am.
know the 2 hours is not sufficient time to read a novel. Still, I hope that you have got an overall idea of the whole thing. Did you?
Hello, ma'am. About the story.
Yes. Tell it.
Hello.
Yes, somebody is trying to ask a question. Yes, tell.
Ma'am, critical criticism, can we explain about the other novels?
Yes, you can, but it will be better if you can cite instances from other novels. It shows that you are well read and you know about other books also. Because the materials on, you can find a plenty of materials on Jane Austen. Even if you don't read the other novels in detail, you can read the summaries and find out things. Because in all the novels, Jane Austen has treated uh, those love and marriage. Love and marriage has been the central theme in all the novels. That's why you can compare one novel with another while writing your answer. Or even you can just compare certain scenes or certain characters. Yes, anybody else?
Ma'am, will you please explain Marxist perspective in Pride and Prejudice?
You are not audible actually. Repeat your question, please.
Ma'am, please explain some major points of Marxist perspective, the critical
Okay,
perspective in
points
Pride
on
and Prejudice.
Marxism. Yes, because Marxism mainly deals with class and money. Okay. To put it in a very simple way, Marxism deals with money and class. And we also find in Pride and Prejudice the treatment of money and class. Upper class, lower class, social mobility and all those things. How compartmentalized the different classes are. And also money. So you can relate it to, there is an elaborate chapter on that particular thing. Do you want me to be
Hello,
more
ma'am.
elaborate on the issue? Yes.
If you then please.
Yes.
Hello. Ma'am, please repeat the round
Yes.
characters and the
Ask your
examples.
question, please.
Please,
Round character and flat character.
some some examples.
Do you want me to explain examples?
No,
Flat
ma'am.
character means they have only one trait or one quality, and that is very specific. Means those are typical characters. For example, Mr. Collins behaves in a particular way, does not change till the end of the novel. But when
Okay, ma'am.
we come to the character of Darcy and Elizabeth, they grow, they learn, they change. So those are round characters. But when E.M. Forster distinguished between flat character and round character, he told in the context that none of the characters of Jane Austen are flat. All of them are round characters. You can read the IGNOU
Okay, ma'am.
material on characters that is mentioned there. Any other question? Any other question? So I suppose that we should stop.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, we already discussed about the previous question, and we always say that love and marriage question is always there. So
Okay.
can we get same question here?
I can't tell whether you will get a question on love and marriage specifically, but sometimes the language is altered and you get the same question, isn't it? When you are getting a question on theme, you have to write about love and marriage. Sometimes you get a question right about Jane Austen's statement of love. Then you have to talk about marriage. Sometimes you only get on marriage. Or it may have a different language like man-woman relationship. So the language can change, but for theme, we have to focus on the theme of love and marriage. Because we have to prepare a question on theme also to write in the exam. Because we expect questions on themes, characters, and narrative techniques. Any other question? Shall we stop today? Okay, it's
Ma'am, we were discussing, ma'am,
sorry.
Yesterday we were discussing and somebody had asked what would be the approximate word limit to write down the answer.
Listen, okay. Listen, it's not about word limit. When you are answering a question of 20 marks, when you are answering a question of 20 marks, that means you should write at least for 3 pages. If it's an A4 size paper, then in your handwriting, if your handwriting is of middle size, then it should be of 3 pages. You can write beyond that also, but write in short paragraphs, each dealing with a point. But don't write in points. Don't write in points 1, 2, 3, 4 or by giving bullets. Write in short paragraphs, each paragraph dealing with a particular point, so that when your examiner will read your answer, it will be very clear to the examiner. Always try to make your script or your answers examiner friendly. Sometimes you can highlight key lines or key words if you want to emphasize something. There is no harm in doing that, as we did in school. But don't
Okay,
write
ma'am.
in
Thank you,
points
sir.
when you answer for literature.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Am I clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So shall we stop here today? For the next class, we will have block 3. Block 3. And you please read the story in advance so that we will be able to discuss, or we can keep more time for discussing.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay,
Let's
thank you,
stop
ma'am.
today.